Okay, so I'm going to cover a few more problem-solving questions today. Before I do that, I just wanted to go through some kind of admin type stuff to do with timings and kind of exam basic technique and things like that. So I'm sure if you've done enough of the papers, you'll have noticed by now that there is a pattern of questions that the order in which these questions come up. Obviously, it's not something that's super significant. It just can help you to know, sort of keep track of what you're doing, you know, and it can help you to kind of organise timing. So I thought I'd go through that first, just in case some of you hadn't noticed this. So first of all, in terms of the questions, the critical thinking questions and the problem-solving questions, the first one is always a critical thinking question, most likely a main conclusion question, so nice and easy start. Second one is problem solving. After that, they basically come out in sets of 3. So you've got, you know, 3 critical thinking, followed by 3 problem solving, 3 critical thinking, and then so on and so forth. So I think that's quite useful because it just helps you to kind of know, okay, I'm going to solve this set of 3, maybe check the time, and the next set of 3, check the time. You know, that can, I think it's better to check as often as possible. So maybe if you kind of determine for yourself, right, 3 questions, if it's critical thinking, how long would you want to spend on that? Obviously, the whole exam is 90 minutes, which gives you about 108-ish seconds per question. So obviously, I think that the critical thinking questions shouldn't be taking you quite as long. So maybe for the set of 3 critical thinking, you kind of, you know, like allocate 90 seconds times 3, you know, and then just say, okay, after exactly 3 minutes, I will be moving on. Sorry, that's just some terrible maths there. 270 seconds total, whatever. So just basically just decide for yourself, okay, how long do I think this set of questions will take me? Do them, move on. And then that way it's kind of breaking down the process for you and just helps you stay on track. The next thing I wanted to talk about was the type of questions that come up. So this is in case you want to split it up by 10 questions, which depends on the type of worker that you are. I would personally go for looking at a whole set of 10, just because I don't want to be kind of, you know, fussing around too much, like stressing myself out. You know, I just would rather get a set done, move on, split it into sort of 5 parts. But, you know, as I said, there's no one way is best type thing, so just, you know, try it out for yourself. You've still got a bit of time to figure out sort of a game plan. So for questions 1 to 10, that's going to be, there are 6 critical thinking and 4 problem solving. And that's the same for questions 21 to 30. So I personally think maybe these 2 sets of questions would maybe take you less time. And then the 11 to 20 and 41 to 50, I think maybe take you a little bit more time. So yeah, it's just about kind of the awareness of where these questions are coming up. The types of questions now I also want to talk about. So I've looked at the majority of the papers, and it seems to be the case that, although I will caveat this with something in a bit, but it seems to be the case that main conclusion questions generally come up about 5 to 6 times in each paper. So if you think about that, that is literally, there's only 25 critical thinking questions. So what you're looking at is like literally 20% of the questions are basically main conclusion questions. So what does that tell you? Basically means if you kind of nail this question type, you've got a pretty solid score, kind of chunk of questions down. And then if you combine that with drawing conclusion questions are also very common, floor as well, underlying assumptions. So let's say you get these 4 kind of, you know, solidly done, then I think it's, you know, there's a good chance that you've done sort of like almost 20 out of the 25 you'll be very strong on. So, you know, just think about it that way. And then in terms of weakening the argument, it's very, very sort of less common compared to the others. And strengthening the argument, this barely comes out at all. So I hope they won't change that for the upcoming exam, but I think you could reasonably predict that it's not going to be sort of a focus question. Now, in terms of the parallel reasoning and the principal question, previously until 2020, it came up a couple times each. You know, it wasn't a super common one, but last year, weirdly, 8 of those 25 questions were basically these ones. So either that's going to mean that this is going to be a very common question type in the upcoming exam, or they may revert back to what it was. Okay, so I think it's important to look at these kind of patterns in advance, because what you should keep in your head is that obviously the university to some extent does want to standardise between years, as well as, you know, in that applicant year group. So I think that from this you can take that main conclusion, make sure you're super confident in, because that is going to be a large majority of the questions. Based upon last year, I would just give parallel reasoning and principle maybe just another look over, but you can pretty much trust that these questions are always going to come up in some capacity. So whereas the weakening argument, strengthening argument, maybe not so much. But yeah, so just a little bit of information to do with that for you. In terms of the problem solving, it's a little bit more difficult, I think, to kind of categorize these questions. I do it into 4 parts, so I basically talk about, I'm basically saying eliminating data, so that's like looking at kind of a huge table of information, you're basically just like working your way to whatever the final answer should be. I find reading data to be a little bit different. This is basically, I think, when you're looking at some given data and then you're not supposed to do any very difficult calculations, but basically quickly understand what you're looking at and then come up with an answer from there, but it might require like a small calculation. So I do think these two are slightly different. Process order, so that's just any sort of calculation, any kind of ordered like multiplication, whatever it might be. And then spatial, I'm sure you've seen these before, like sort of those, they might give you like a cube and say which side is up or whatever. So obviously this type of question does come out the least, so if you're struggling with this one, then it's not going to be a huge issue for you. Maybe focus more on kind of like nailing the technique for the others. This is by far obviously the most common one, so just make sure you're really strong and you've done a bit of sort of practiced some basic and like maybe memorize some easy like I don't know, times tables or something, whatever. It's going to help you speed up the process of getting through the questions. And then with the data, I think this one is the easiest to sort of guarantee to do well in. So just make sure that you really have understood exactly how to read all different types of data, graphs, tables, whatever it might be. Just be very comfortable with it, and I think that would get you quite a long way. So this is just what I kind of would suggest as timings if you were going to split it up into 5 parts, but this would obviously keep you right under the 90-minute mark, so maybe it's not ideal if you would prefer to have a bit more time left at the end. As I said, I think the 3-question timing is pretty good as well, so if you sort of do 3 minutes for each set of critical thinking, and then maybe 5 minutes for each set of problem solving, I think you would still have enough time to do everything. So, just have a think about it, maybe time 3 questions at a time and see how long that takes you. So yeah, I think those were the main admin sort of timing, sort of what I wanted to talk about in terms of predicting what questions might come up and things like that. So maybe I hope that sort of is useful for you to maybe start thinking about if you haven't already looked at something similar. Right, so on to some problem solving questions. So here we're looking at a table, it looks like it's showing a 5-year moving average. We're trying to find y, which is here. So in order to find y, we need to know x, because y is obviously an average of these. The 5-year moving average, 3-year moving average is very common. You just basically average these and to get that one, and then you just keep moving forward. We don't need to know z, so we'll ignore that. In order to find x, we can just use, oops, that's too far, but up to there, and take this one here. So I don't know that there is actually a quicker way to do this one. So I'm just maybe going to go with that. So 6,830, I'm just going to use the larger values there. So 13.4, 13.7, 13.3 and 14.9 plus x is going to equal that. So we can find x this way basically. So we've got 3, 2, 5, 8, 11, 15. So we've got 65.3, which would mean that x is equal to 13. Now, again, we have to just kind of put the work in. Again, in order to, I meant to put 55.3. So yeah, we just have to add the rest up. So it's going to be 13.4, 14.4, 13.4, 13.7, and then the x value that we found, which is 13. We'll just add these up to give us 4, 8, 12, 19. 1, 4, 8, 11, 14, 17, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 67,790, just to make the calculation a bit easier. 5, so 13.58 is our answer, so it's going to be C. So yeah, I don't know that there is a shorter way to do this, just yeah, if you know what a moving average is though, then it's not anything too complicated, it's just making sure it's adding everything up correctly. Okay, so this is the photograph thing. I think somebody said. So how long after I arrived at the photograph booth did I insert my money? So just having a skim of this, I can see that that is not very important. So we're just going to look here. Money may be inserted when the green light is on, light goes out immediately after money is inserted, comes back on 3 minutes later. This morning I was being switched on, I was sick. First person inserted their money at 0 minutes, and the rest of us all inserted as soon as we were able to. So the first person was at 0, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, so 15 minutes. I think the only reason that this maybe could be confusing is if you think, you know, the way that you might try and shortcut it is like to do 3 times 6 and then you get 18 and you're like, oh, it takes 18 minutes. But you have to remember that 18 minutes is including the 3 minutes that passes for that last person as well. Okay, so this is, again, a reading data one, biggest percentage increase. So with these ones, I wouldn't expect you to do actually any calculations. So we're just looking for the biggest percentage increase. Just look down the table and then sort of compare. So we got 3 to £4.20. You can know from that that's less than 50%, right? So if the next one is more, then you know that that is going to be greater, right? So for the next one, 210 is the difference. So that is exactly 50%. So we can already cut out 2011 to 12, and then you sort of just work your way down. So the one to beat is 50%, so if it's more or less, basically. 630 to 945, 315, that is exactly 50% as well. So we kind of know that those two are just not going to be the answers, essentially. 945 to 1512, 450, 470, that far exceeds 50%, that's greater than 50% by quite some distance. And then this value here, it's only just, it's not even, I think it's just about 50% maybe, but not really actually. So quite easily, we're just going to go with D. So again, no crazy calculations, just try and look for some kind of factor that you can, you know, keep consistent down the table. Okay, how many shells did the youngest girl collect for herself? Okay, so we've got 5 girls, 24 shells is the max in the bucket. They want the same number of shells at the end. 4 are too short, so they have 22 at the moment. Youngest one is lagging. They each give 3 shells, which leaves them with 19 each. And 3 times 4, so they've given away 12 shells. They want to equalise. So how many does she collect? So it must be 19 minus 12, 7. So again, nothing complicated here. Don't let yourself get bogged down in the details of it. There's very few numbers here, so you know that you just have to kind of, you know, make sure you're not missing out on anything. Okay, destination is reached at 12 midday. What time did the journey begin? So we've got a 15-kilometre drive at 60 kilometres an hour. And then we've got 5 hours on the motorway, including 2 15-minute rest stops. And then 20-kilometre drive at an average speed of 40 kilometres an hour. So that is quite a mean trick actually, because obviously we're trying to find time. So we're just using speed equals distance over time, right? But in this case, they've given us the time for the second one, and they've just put all this extra information, hoping that you're just gonna try and actually calculate it, but you don't need to, right? So we actually only need to work out these 2 things because we've already got 5 hours added. So yeah, just use this formula, right? So 60 over 15, so it's obviously gonna take us 15 minutes to do that first leg. And then it's 40 kilometres for 20, so it's going to take us 30 minutes. Add it all up to give 5 hours 45, take it away from 12, so 7, 6, 15 should be the answer. So this is what I would say is a spatial question. So we're looking for the correct shading, and what is that based off of? We've got 5 shades on a grid of 16. 1 student did it as instructed, other 4 got exactly 1 square wrong. So immediately what you want to do is look at it and then see, okay, which squares are matching on every single one, because those must necessarily be correct squares, right? So as you can see, every single one of these has these 3 squares, right? Yes. Okay, so now we can start narrowing down which ones are incorrect. So obviously, if you look, everybody else also has this square, so this one is also correct. So now we just only have 1 square left to find. So this is the only guy that doesn't have that square. So we know one of these is right and one of these is wrong. So we just need to find which one only exists for this guy here. So you can see that this one must be the incorrect square because no one else has it, which means this is correct, which means that the correct answer must be E, because it has that combination. Right, okay, so what is the necessary amount of sourdough? How much sourdough do I want? 500 grams and then plus 50. So we basically just want 550. I'm guessing there is going to be something where it's like 500 and then we need to exceed it or something like that. So we have 8 a.m. Monday morning, the time's not really important, right? 50 grams of flour plus 50 grams of water, and then each morning I'm doubling, okay? So, and then 1 gram is evaporating per hour. So on Tuesday, I would be left with 100 minus 24, so 76, doubled is gonna be 152, and then I'm gonna lose 24 again. So on Wednesday morning, how much am I doubling? I can't do maths. 28. So I've got 128 to double basically. So then I'm going to be on 256. Again, I'm going to lose 24. So on Thursday, I'm going to have 464. And then I'm going to take away 24 again. I don't need to calculate this to know it's going to be Friday because Thursday is just not going to cut it. So again, just draw it out, map it out. Don't try and do this kind of stuff in any fancy way. There's no real trick to it. Just make sure that you're paying attention to all the conditions. When they split up the conditions like this, you know it's going to play some part in the question. So just use every hint as given to you. Okay, so I'm going to leave that for now and then try and cover some more questions very soon.